Each week, nearly a dozen movies are released theatrically. 40 films a month, more than 400 a year. That's a plethora of cinema. Too much cinema. You'd have to be an addict to see all that, but don't fret. We've got you covered. This is CinemAddicts.
Hey everyone, what's up? It's a new week of CinemAddicts. This is CinemAddicts episode 262. We are covering movies that are being released on Friday, October 4th, 2024. The movies are Daaaaálí, Frankie Freako, VHS Beyond, Take Cover, and Operation Blood Hunt. Eric and I did see Operation Blood Hunt, so that's the one movie that we will review together for this episode. I missed a whole bunch of movies this week, but it's a weird sort of, how would you say, Solomon Grundy experience? What is it? What is that DC term comes where it's
superhero?
Yeah, superhero terms where it's reverse. I forgot what it's not Solomon Grundy. I forgot. Oh, it's a bizarro experience. Is it a bizarro? Bizarro experience, because I got to review a movie called Take Cover, which stars Scott Adkins and Eric Holmes. Scott Adkins is your favorite actor. And what happened this week for CinemAddicts episode 262?
I did not get through the whole thing. I did not have time to finish the movie, and I hate that.
Wait, how far are you into the movie?
Probably like 20 minutes.
Oh, wow. Jeez.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, we'll get to actually Eric's review of Take Cover will be next week for CinemAddicts episode 263.
I will say, though, even though I didn't get to finish it, it's still banger season.
It's still banger season.
It's still banger season.
Okay. So look, here's the thing. So again, Daaaaálí, I wasn't not able to see, which I really wanted to see. And Frankie Freako, there's a whole bunch of stuff. Eric, before we get to the reviews, what's the last week been like? Been working a lot? Still the same? Have you been able to get some rest?
No. And
no rest.
Yes and no. Have got to work a lot. Haven't got much rest, but got some sleep last night. That's when I was watching, trying to Take Cover in. I got 20 minutes in, and I'm like, my body's like, no, you're done. Go lay down. I know you love Scott Adkins. I know this is a rad movie, but you're done. Either you're going to go to sleep or I'm going to put you to sleep. So I was like, okay, body, I will listen to you.
Well, I have a separate plan where you can actually do a better workflow for this, Eric, and see all the Scott Adkins movies you want. I'm going to give that suggestion in a few moments. But so in defense of Eric, here's Eric Holmes. That is, he did 2 interviews. He did a movie called Paradox Effect, and he interviewed director Scott Weintraub. And then he also interviewed this actor named Harry Baxendale for the Radleys. So this was not for want of or lack of watching movies. Eric, correct. You just had way too many movies to watch within the last 7 days, or maybe 6 days, because we're recording earlier. Is that what happened this week?
Yeah, there's that too. Oh, and speaking of Paradox Effect, well, we're going to talk about that
second.
Friday.
Yeah.
But
say whatever you want to say right now, but a little teaser.
We got Scott Adkins. So I did get 20 minutes of a Scott Adkins movie. We're gonna today. You're going to hear us talk about a Louis Mandylor movie, and Friday you're going to hear me talk about Olga Kurylenko movie. So thumbs up all the way.
So there's a lot of thumbs up all the way.
And a Content Depew movie today.
Yeah,
there's so many good things. So, Frankie Freako,
and I've got your back on Scott Adkins today. And look, we can continue the Scott Adkins experience next week with Take Cover. So we're all good. My suggestion to you, Eric, is we've got Bruce Purkey in CinemAddicts. He's over up in the CinemAddicts. Why doesn't he just do all of our movies, and then you can just, like, for example, this week, you could have just done Take Cover,
you know what,
and then just leave it all to Bruce Purkey, because for the final segment for this episode, he is doing reviews of Daaaaálí, he's doing Frankie Freako, and he's also doing VHS Beyond. Maybe we should have him just also review way more movies than we covered. What do you think?
Me not having time for a Scott Adkins movie is karma paying me back for not filling Bruce's water bowl. And I said I'm sorry.
Oh, jeez. Are you giving him kibble yet? Are you from the pennies you're making?
I learned my lesson. I'm pumping the brakes on torturing Bruce. So Bruce, through my love of Scott Adkins and my newfound fear of karma, we're turning a new leaf.
We're turning a new leaf. Maybe Bruce Purkey. I wonder if Bruce Purkey will be ever let out of that Cinem-Attic. We'll see what happens. But I like it. He does. You do listen to Bruce's reviews. Aren't they thoughtful and nice? Yeah. He does a pretty good job without too much water and barely any kibble, right? What do you think?
Yeah. Oh, it's because he's a pro.
Bruce Purkey may not be a human being, but he's a pro's pro. Now, let's try to get professional right now with these 5 movies we are covering this week. Let's start off with a Quentin Dupieux movie. It's called Daaaaálí. The reason why it's annoyingly called Daaaaálí because it's a movie about surreal artist Salvador Dali. Okay, Dali. But the way this movie is spelled, it's Dali, not Dali. It's D with 6 A's, Li. Accent on the I. I don't know. It is really interesting. And it centers on Salvador Dali. He's being interviewed by a journalist named Judith Rochant, played by Anaïs de Moustier. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but what's interesting is it's like a Quentin Dupieux movie. The running time is about 78 minutes, but I'm reading on the plot synopsis. There are 5 people who portray Dali. So Quentin Dupieux is a very funny and talented filmmaker, and a lot of his movies and subject matter are surreal. So mix that in with a surreal painter like Dali, in this case, Dali, might be a perfect marriage. Was it a great coupling for you, Eric Holmes? You're a huge fan. You've seen all of his movies. How does this movie stack up to the rest of his work?
It stacks up pretty nice. So this movie's funny, but it's like the Quentin Dupieux kind of funny, where it's like just kind of, well, that's strange. And then you notice something like, so the one lady that's interviewing Dali, she's in a hotel room with the Salvador Dali's PR person, I imagine, manager, whoever that other person is. And they're like, oh, Salvador Dali's almost here. And they're like, okay, let's go wait for him. He's just down the hallway. And then they go out and Dali's walking. He's like, yep, almost there. It's like an impossibly long hallway. And they're just waiting for him. And the cut keeps cutting back to where he's at the same place, but still walking. And then they're just sitting there for like 10 minutes. She's like, I really got to go to the bathroom. Yeah, go hurry up. And then she goes to the bathroom. Yep, almost there. Damn long hallway we got here. Okay, I'm back from the bathroom in a minute. No, he's still here. Oh, we should order water. Oh, yeah, I'll go do that. They order water. The guy from downstairs brings up the water from behind. Here's your water. And Dolly's like, this is the kind of like absurdist kind of humor that's in this. But anyway, yeah, she's trying to, what was it? She tries to interview him and she's taking notes and he doesn't like that. So he just gets up and leaves. Like, I thought we were going to take pictures or video or something. And you're just writing. This is just a written interview. Not interested. And he gets up and leaves. She agrees to film an interview and, with a cinematographic camera. And, so he agrees to do that. And he pulls up and like crashes right into the camera. Yeah, we can't shoot now because you destroy the camera. This is unacceptable, unprofessional. I will leave now. And then, it basically is an a-hole. But this is, it's got a lot of humor. It's got a lot of the absurdity that you expect in a Dupieux movie. And yeah. And Salvador Dali is a kind of a prima donna family show. Yeah. Penis head, I guess.
Penis head, the family show. Do you think there is a barrier to entry with these type of movies with Dali? I
think Quentin Dupieux is kind of like Wes Anderson. You know if you're into it or not. Like, I'm not into Wes Anderson, but I love Quentin Dupieux. And so I was in on this. And, I'll watch anything he does. But if you're towards Quentin Dupieux as I am with Wes Anderson, maybe you already know what you're in for. And you know you're not going to like it. But if you're in for Quentin Dupieux, then you're going to love this as much as you loved everything else he's done. And if you're not familiar with him, this would probably be a good entry point because it does have some absurdity to it, but it's not as crazy as, say, Smoking Causes Coughing, for example. Like, Smoking Causes Coughing is just complete bonkers. This has a little bit of, this might be the most accessible of his movies, but it's still kind of insane.
Okay, so insane, absurdist humor. It's in theaters. Dali is in theaters October 4th. Final comment and rating, Eric Holmes.
Oh, Quentin Dupieux. Anytime his movies come out, I get excited. This one was no different. Don't really know what else to say. Check it out. 5 stars. And Quentin Dupieux doing Salvador Dali. I mean, how perfect is that? You couldn't ask for a better filmmaker to make a movie about Salvador Dali.
I mean, when you're watching the Pew movies, for example, with Daaaaálí, are you laughing out loud, or are you just smirking throughout the experience, or is it just a big smile?
Sometimes I laugh out, like the gag I explained poorly probably at the beginning. That was like funny, but I didn't even realize the joke until like a while into the joke. It was like, okay, they're just waiting for him. Man, that's an impossibly long hallway. Oh my God, they're using the same shot over and over. So it was kind of like stuff like that. That joke was more of like, crept up on me. But other things where he's just being a penis head, those are just funny. Yeah. Sometimes I laugh out loud. Sometimes it's, oh, that's clever. And sometimes it's, I see what you're doing there. So it runs the gamut of humor.
Okay, cool. So that is 5 stars from Eric Holmes for Daaaaálí. It's out in theaters again on Friday, October 4th. Next up, a movie that is out in theaters, available on digital and on demand October 4th, is a movie starring Scott Adkins called Take Cover. Here's a plot synopsis. Quote, Scott Adkins has got no cover, no backup, and no way out in this claustrophobic action thriller. He plays this guy named Sam Lord. He spent his lifetime killing people. He's a military veteran who actually has his fellow colleague, his best friend, played by Jack Parr, serve as his spotter. Eric, you might know Jack Parr because he was the co-lead in a shark movie called The Last Breath. So he was good in The Last Breath. He's good. Do you remember The Last Breath? Did you see it, Eric?
Yeah, that was the which one was that? There's been a bunch of shark movies.
Yeah, so that's the one with Julian Sands, the late Julian Sands in The Last Breath. They have the place and the island, and they go down, and then they get stuck in the waters down on the thing, The Last Breath. So Jack Parr's college friends.
Is that the one with the treasure hunt and the crazy rich guy was like, I'll fund this?
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Okay, I was getting that in the
one of Julian Sands,
the Paris one.
Oh no, but this is the one that has Julian Sands.
But yeah, I'm getting all my shark movies confused.
Oh right, the Paris one is the one from the director of Mayhem, which I haven't seen yet, and that's the one currently streaming on Netflix.
That's shark movies.
Yeah, so the Mayhem director did the shark movie.
Also, like Black Demon. Screw everyone that doesn't.
Okay, so anyway, Scott Adkins and Jack Parr, they play hitman and spotter. And what happens is Scott Adkins' character tells his boss, played by Alice Eve, that this is his final job. They go to, I forgot where they go to. They go to a certain area for their last job. And his boss is not too pleased, but she sets them up in a nice penthouse level on a beautiful, luxurious hotel. When they get into the penthouse, things seem a little bit weird, and they realize that both of them are targeted to be killed by the boss. That is not a spoiler. That is a premise of Take Cover. Then most of the movie, after this reveal, takes place in that really closed off section in the penthouse as they try to dodge the bullets of the other sniper and another spotter. So you got to figure out, will Scott Adkins' character and Jack Parr's character pretty much survive at the end of Take Cover? There's also a couple of young women who come up as massage therapists before the hit takes place, and they find themselves in danger. So essentially, there are 2 women, and then the hitman and the spotter whose lives are in danger within the realm of Take Cover and in this penthouse apartment. So I'm a big fan of Scott Adkins, but unfortunately, Eric Holmes is the biggest fan of Scott Adkins.
You're the one big enough to watch a whole thing this week. So.
Yeah, no, this is one of these movies that I really thought was going to work, and I was in the bag for this, and it did not disappoint me. It's directed by Nick McKinless. The suspense stuff, the tension is really well done, and it's one of these movies where I'm trying to look at the running time. This is just one of those perfect 90-minute action thrillers that has a lot of share of action, but the dramatic stuff in Take Cover works for me. There's a lot of heart to this movie as well. And what's interesting is Scott Adkins' character. He's a sniper who believes he's a good sniper. But is he really good? Has he really done a good job? He thinks he has his own reason, which I'm not going to reveal, for why he joined the military and why he became a sniper. But are those values and motives misplaced by possibly a corrupt organization? You will figure out what happens to Scott Adkins' character and motivations in Take Cover. Alice Eve is good. She has a small role because a lot of times her voice is, you don't really see her, you see her voice. So I'm thinking indie project. Maybe they got Alice Eve for a couple of days and they used, I don't know what happens, but she has a good enough role because she is the one who's playing the chess match against Scott Adkins and Jack Parr. Really well done film. And this is one of the films that I can see myself watching over and over again. And I'm going to recommend to people who are not even Scott Adkins fans who want their action thriller, but a little bit more of a twist. So I'm giving Take Cover, which again is in theaters, on digital, and on demand. I was not pleasantly surprised. I was expecting greatness, but I got a little bit more. Instead of 4 stars, I'm giving Take Cover 4.5 stars. I've loved Scott Adkins for the last 5+ years. The first time I saw Avengement, really loved that movie. This is almost on the level of Avengement because it's just it's an escapist action thriller, but with a really cool twist behind it and a lot of heart behind it as well. So Take Cover, 4.5 stars for me.
So before you go, I did manage to watch that opening action scene.
Yeah.
They had that sniper scene and then they were trying to get away and then Scott Adkins putting a hand up and it's like most people would think, oh, the jig is up. But I've seen a Scott Adkins movie before. I'm like, the jig is not up. You guys are about to hit the ground quick. And they had that whole thing where it was just kicking the crap out of all of them. And it was just a well-staged action scene. And then I'm looking at the director. He was a stuntman on The Matrix, Batman Begins, Bourne movies, Dark Knight, Rock and Rolla, Quantum of Solace, Wolfman, Green Zone, Kick-Ass, Clash of the Titans, Harry Potter. Like he's been a stunt person on just about every big movie that's ever came out in the last, I don't know, 10, 20 years, something like that. And so I don't know what it is, but stuntmen seem to make great action directors.
No, that's a good point.
And in the case of Isaac Florentine, martial arts people just in general seem to have a really good eye for action. And yeah, I love seeing it. And I cannot wait to watch the rest of this.
The action scenes in Take Cover are well done, and the actual storytelling of Take Cover is really well done as well. That's why I'm giving it.
I had to watch that part where there was that wolf. I don't know if it was a wolf or like a husky or whatever, but he points a gun at it for a second.
And he's wondering what
they're smiling at him. It's like,
yeah,
it was just like a little fun moment, but yeah, it was good stuff so far.
Scott Adkins' character has a house in the woods that's at the opening act of Take Cover. That's what Eric is referencing. And hopefully, look, if you can't see it in theaters, this is one of those movies where I'm going to say, hey, CinemAddicts listeners, theaters, I mean, digital and on demand, use our Amazon link, watch it. This is one of these movies that I really, really enjoyed. Now, next up is a movie called Frankie Freako, right? Frankie Freako. It's from the director of PG Psycho Gorman. All three of us really love PG Psycho Gorman, specifically Eric Holmes and Bruce Purkey. I think Bruce Purkey even purchased a couple of memorabilia items from PG Psycho Gorman. He's that much.
And he'll probably purchase more from this one as well.
Yes, and the movie is written and directed by Steven Kostanski. Yes, the aforementioned director from PG Psycho Gorman. What is Frankie Freako about? Look, it says here, workaholic yuppie Connor Sweeney has a dilemma. No one in his life respects him. Not his boss, not his co-workers, not even his wife. She thinks he's a square. So then what happens is he gets out of his lifelong rut when he channel surfs and catches a bizarre ad for a party hotline hosted by a strange dancing goblin called Frankie Freako. Now, within this Frankie Freako universe, Connor is immediately immersed in it. I have no idea what happens. Eric Holmes has seen it. Eric, your review and further plot explanation behind Frankie Freako.
Further plot explanation, can't do it.
Okay, fair.
Review. I'll see what I can muster here. This movie's insane. Did you ever watch Garbage Pail Kids when it came out?
No, just a documentary.
All right.
Yeah.
So there's the movie Garbage Pail Kids. Now, kind of close your eyes for a second and imagine. I'm going to see if I can paint you a picture. Imagine if Garbage Pail Kids, the movie, was good. And now dump a bunch of meth on that movie, and then you have Frankie Freak. So yeah, he basically everyone calls Connor a square, and his wife is like really like into guns for some reason, and his boss. So his boss is the Adam Brooks, the dad from Psycho Gorman. He's just as funny as in this, but he's Connor's boss. I'm just gonna go all over the place with this. So Connor has like a presentation he's got to make, and his boss comes up and he's like, "Hey, yeah, I want to talk about that presentation. You might want to spice it up a bit." And he's like, "Why is that?" And he's like, "That's very dull." And he's like, "You don't know what you're talking about, blah blah blah." And he's like, "Well, I'm just saying this presentation, if you knock it out of the park, a promotion could be in the deal for you." And it's like, okay, cool. And then so he goes, talks to his wife, and she's like, "Yeah, you're boring. That thing's boring. Sorry, I love you, but them's the breaks." And then he goes to and at night he's watching, he's not even watching TV. It's just kind of on. And then the Frankie Freako, those, remember they had those late night sex ads?
Right. Yeah.
"Hey, Greg, are you lonely?
Family show.
Well, you don't have to be lonely tonight. Call 1-900-555-CinemAddicts. Only $1.99 the first minute, 99 cents each." Like one of those things.
$500 a second minute. Yeah.
But it's, "Hey, do you want to party? Call Frankie Freak." It's kind of one of those things. And then so he's at the board meeting or the presentation. And it's about as boring as you can imagine it would be, or as boring as everyone said it would be. But then, like, he looks at someone's head and it starts like morphing around and like starts flashing. And it's like kind of looks like Frankie Freako. And he's like, "Ah!" And he just starts screaming and just freaking out, and basically destroys the presentation. They get done. He's like, "Oh, I blew it. His boss comes in. He's like, "Connor, we got to talk. In all my years in working in this business, that was by far the greatest presentation I've ever seen. It was massive." Anyway, it goes on. He ends up calling the 1-900 number. And then, so when he calls the number, the phone is what they teleport from. It's how they teleport through the dimensions. So the commercial wasn't even real. It's just what they put out in the world. So someone would call it and then they can hop out. And then is Frankie Freako, and then two other Freakos. I can't remember their names. One just keeps saying Shabadoo the whole time. And they start turning, like, Connor wakes up the next day and he forgets everything that happens, but he sees his house is destroyed. But they just wrote, like, they like spray paint on the walls, but they just spray paint like butt. I'm not even cleaning it up because it's a family show. Let's
just say B-U-T without the
the kids know what a butt is. It's fine.
Yeah, I'm getting, yeah.
The drinks they have, it's unclear if it's a soda or beer, but it's called Fart Classic. The Connor wakes up and he's like, "What? Oh, God, I drink some of this? I guess it's not that bad." He's like, "Oh," and then it zooms in. It's like with caffeine. And so basically the whole movie is them, like, Connor learning how to be more of a party animal, and Frankie Freako learning how to, be kinder to people, and they all become friends along the way, especially later on when they meet other Freakos. I'm sorry, I'm just rambling on.
What did you love about Frankie Freako in your rating?
I love everything about this movie.
Well, you love Gremlins. That's your favorite movie. So is there sort of a parallel there?
Yeah, there's some. So like Frankie Freako and the effects in this are really bad, but like I think on purpose.
Yeah.
Like they look like,
right, of course, yeah.
Yeah, they look, they look like pretty simple puppets or whatever. Kind of like the Garbage Pail Kids, the movie that I mentioned. But that's kind of the charm in this. I think Psycho Gorman had like the brain. The kid that turned into the brain, it looks like an obvious puppet, but you still kind of roll with it. Yeah, this is 6.9 all the way. I kind of wish I was taking mushrooms. Actually, Bruce suggested it, and I'm kind of glad I didn't.
Okay,
I think I might have freaked out on this. Oh, the Portobellos is what I meant to say, but yeah, this is. I really need to watch Steve Costanzi's movie The Void. I still have not watched that, and I don't know why. Because Psycho Gorman is awesome. This is awesome. Like, dude's he's certainly got the pulse of me. He makes movies I like. So I did Leprechaun Returns. Should watch that. I need to watch everything he's done.
So that is Frankie Freako. Eric Holmes gave it 6.9 stars, and that it's in select theaters October 4th. Your review was all over the place, Eric, because you love this movie so much. I think you were just pretty much gobsmacked by the entire film.
I cannot imagine watching this in theaters. I hope it's playing near me.
Oh, geez.
I have to watch this in the theater.
No, you don't have time to
Just
drive out to theater where there might be a theater that might be an hour away. You don't have time for that, Eric. Come on.
I might have to suck it up and do it,
Oh,
because
no.
the thing is, this movie's so insane, and I've watched it once already. So I will sit in the front row and just turn around. I'm not even going to watch the movie. I'm just going to turn around and watch the audience watch the movie.
That's hilarious. All right. Again, it's 6.9 stars. Eric Holmes, Frankie Freako. Now let's get to the movie that Eric and I did see together. Not together specifically, but separately. But we both saw the movie, Operation Blood Hunt. Okay. Operation Blood Hunt, directed by Louis Mandylor. We like his work. Eric has interviewed Louis Mandylor before, I believe, for The Flood. I think was it The Flood? Yeah, you interviewed him.
It was him, Casper Dean, and
the director,
Nikki Whelan.
Okay, Nikki Whelan and Brandon Slagle, the director. Yeah. So
who wrote this?
well, yeah, Brandon Slagle wrote Operation Blood Hunt. This looks like it could be a fun movie. Here, it centers on prolific expert of the occult and whiskey, Reverend Conte. Okay, Reverend Conte. He accompanies a ragtag group of military rejects to a remote South Pacific island to investigate the disappearance of Marines that were stationed there back in 1944. And supposedly these Marines were maybe abducted, might be killed by a Japanese Imperial Army. However, this is not a spoiler, but this is the premise of the movie. The Reverend knows the real mystery behind all this disappearance of the Marines is due to the fact of some really hungry and violent and vicious werewolves. The Reverend is played by Quentin Rampage Jackson. Jonathan Rhys-Meyers plays a bar owner who is more than actually a bar owner. There's a lot of secrets to the Jonathan Rhys-Meyers character. But this bar owner is also the best friend of the Reverend. He is sort of the support of the Reverend. And then there's a whole group of people, sort of like a la Magnificent Seven or Dirty Dozen style, a bunch of military people who accompany the Reverend on his mission to, well, the military rejects, they think they're saving the Marines, but they're on pretty much a suicide mission, because they have no idea that there are werewolves waiting to pretty much chomp on them. So that is the premise of Operation Blood Hunt. Eric Holmes, your review, your thoughts on the movie.
I love this one as well. As I said, we're in banger season. Real quick question. Louis Mandylor was in this. It says it's Richter. Was that the
vampire?
That was him?
That was him.
Okay.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that. Yeah,
I knew he was in it, and I'm watching. I'm like, where the hell is Louis Mandylor? And the only thing I could point out was that vampire character. I'm like, maybe that's him. I don't know. That was actually my favorite character in the whole thing. So the werewolves look kind of silly in this compared to how the rest of the movie goes.
And I feel that's intentional, correct? Because of the budgets, the constraints of the budgets.
I mean, maybe, but I never really got werewolf vibes. I got guy in suit vibes.
Of course.
And I think in something like Frankie Freako, that works because they really lean into this. This is definitely over the top. And it's, I mean, you got the soldier guy with the hand grenade on his, Louis Mandylor is that vampire was probably my favorite thing in this movie. I didn't even know it was Louis Mandylor. I suspected it could be, but the way he moves around, it looks like Alucard in Symphony of the Night. And it's got that weird kind of tracer thing going.
Yeah.
The story itself is kind of more convoluted than it needs to be, but it's also kind of, it's what you expect in a movie like this.
This is supposed to be a comic booky graphic novel type of movie. And I agree with you. The plot is convoluted because you're trying to figure out what's going on with the werewolves. There's also a tribe in the island. What is their relationship to the werewolves? There's a lot of story in this movie, and I appreciate that from Brandon Slagle and Louis Mandylor, but I feel a lot of the plot stuff was convoluted. I wish they streamlined the narrative a lot more.
Yeah, but then when it gets to even though the werewolves look goofy, I mean, the werewolves look goofy in Dog Soldiers, and that movie's rad too. So, in fact, this movie's kind of a lot similar to Dog Soldiers, not just the werewolf stuff, but I think this one plays a little more tongue in cheek than Dog Soldiers does, which I appreciate with this. And the action scenes were good. I'd say the whole third act, when you really start to see the or maybe, yeah, about the last third where the werewolves really start to show up and you get the good werewolf action that you've been waiting for. When that starts kicking off, even though the werewolves look goofy, the scenes are so cool. And yeah, love it. Love watching people die. People get their arms cut off or ripped off, so to speak. Yeah, all sorts of fun stuff.
There is a lot of fun stuff in this movie. Here's a couple of things that are the pluses. Jonathan Rhys-Meyers is acting as you-know-what off in this movie. He's good as the bar owner, right?
I didn't know that was him either. That was another
Really?
one.
Okay, no, he's great. Oh, yeah, you had no idea until you saw the cast list on it?
Yeah, I'm like, who was that guy? That, in fact, Jonathan Rhys-Meyers was one of the characters I thought, maybe that's Louis Mandylor? No, probably not.
So Jonathan Rhys-Meyers, Louis Mandylor, pretty much all of the military rejects in this movie, they're all good actors. They were all good in the movie. Quentin Rampage Jackson, to me, is a non-actor. I loved him in the A-Team. He's fine in this movie. I just wanted, not like Louis Mandylor, he was directing the movie, but if Louis Mandylor was the Reverend, that would have been cool. And I know Quentin Rampage Jackson, he previously worked with Louis Mandylor in, I forgot what it's called, in a previous movie with Louis Mandylor. I think Mandylor directed a movie called 3 Days in Malay or something like that.
Yeah.
And Rampage was in it. So I don't know. I just wish there was a different actor as a lead. Still enjoyed all of the supporting players.
Oh, you didn't like him as the Reverend?
I mean, he was no. I just thought he was. He didn't work for me as a Reverend. But the movie overall and the plot was convoluted. That said, I still had fun with the movie. Like Louis Mandylor, loved what Mandylor could do as a director with the budget he had. And it was an ambitious film. I just wish, again, the plot was streamlined. I wish it was a different lead actor. I'm giving it a mild recommendation. Operation Blood Hunt is 3 stars for me. What about you, Eric?
I'm going 3-star banger. Actually, I completely disagree with you on Quentin Rampage Jackson.
Oh, you thought it was good?
Yeah, I liked everybody in this because I think they all kind of. I mean, my favorite by far was Louis Mandylor, which
he was great. Yeah,
and actually Jonathan Rhys-Meyers, he was great, but like everyone was just kind of that over the top or like hyper realistic version of whatever archetype they were playing, and I just loved watching it. I thought Quentin Rampage Jackson. He understood the assignment and he was playing the Reverend as I think anyone playing that character should, kind of resolve, but, he likes to find the bottom of a bottle and he'll kick ass when he needs to. Like, it's just, I liked his character. I liked him in it. Maybe someone could have done better. I don't know. Maybe lots of people could do lots of things, but I could not disagree with you more. I actually really like this character in this.
Well, that's good. I'm glad you disagree.
So I will say Quentin Rampage Jackson is a very strong person, and you can beat up Greg, not me.
No, I liked him. And again, I liked him in A-Team. I haven't seen that movie. Was it called 3 Days in Malay or 2 Days in Malay? I don't know what it's called. But that's why I'm giving it a mild recommendation because I liked a lot of things about Operation Blood Hunt. And look, if there might be a promise of another movie if they ever get the funds together, and I'd see that movie as well. So that is Operation Blood.
And how often do we get werewolf movies?
That's true.
I think we've gotten a couple like recently, but not many.
Yeah. So that is 3-star banger for Eric, 3 stars for me. Operation Blood Hunt out on VOD and digital October 4th. All right. So that is it. I think I'm looking through our list. Are there any movies that we did not cover? Yes. VHS Beyond, that is being covered by Bruce in the final segment. And then again, Bruce will also be covering Frankie Freako and Daaaaálí. Final thoughts, Eric, before we go?
I'm just looking at the directors of VHS Beyond. They say C.J. Cheel, who did the cursed films on Shudder, and he also does the podcast Film Junk. I listen to that sometimes. So.
Oh, it's good. Oh, it's a good podcast, Film Junk.
Yeah, I like it, and I gotta watch the rest of Takeover and VHS Beyond before we touch next week.
I know, right? Exactly. We'll see.
But and we still got a couple more movies to talk about, but that's for Friday. So
for Friday, show.
Banger season does not stop now. Continue on Friday.
Yes, and look. Here's the thing. Even though both Eric and I do recommend Operation Blood Hunt, we definitely disagree on the film. Would love to hear what you guys think of Operation Blood Hunt or any of these movies that we covered here on Cinematics episode 262. Oh my gosh, we have another episode to do, Eric Holmes.
Yeah,
I know.
I wasn't even ready for this one.
You weren't ready for this one? Is recording at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock for you a little bit too early in the morning? What do you think?
It is, but it's what needs to be done. If
really?
It's going to get done at all.
Okay, all right.
Well, it doesn't need to be done, but it might. Yeah.
All right. So we're going to get to Bruce Purkey, but before we get to Bruce, here's Claire.
Goodbye, everybody. Thank you for joining CinemAddicts.
Back in the attic. Back in the attic. Back in the attic. What am I singing? I'm trying to think I'm singing some version of an Aerosmith song. No one needs that. That wasn't even singing. I was just talking. Hey, we're back in the attic. The attic of cinema. Anyway, we are discussing 3 features this week. I think it's 3. I have my notes are going to be really rustling today because I'm all over the place. We have Frankie Freako from the filmmakers who brought us the awesome Psycho Gorman. We have Daaaaálí from Quentin Dupieux, who has made a lot of interesting movies. And we also have VHS Beyond in the seemingly yearly anthology series of VHS movies, which lately have been doing different years. VHS 80, whatever, VHS 90, whatever. And we'll talk about that. And then I have a few recommends this week as well. One including a rewind of the movie Sleep that Eric reviewed last week. I might throw some spoilers in on that just for some fun. Anyway, let us start with worst to first for the features. The first and the worst is VHS Beyond. I'm not going to list a bunch of filmmakers because each of these segments is by a different filmmaker, and you can look all that up if you want. If you know the basic concept of VHS movies, they are found footage, basically. They are horror. They are almost always like based around some vintage time period, like I just mentioned, a year or some sort of a theme like that. And then they usually are trying to kind of give a VHS aesthetic. So they kind of have the broken up, grungy, staticky, jumpy kind of look for the media on top of the found footage aesthetic, which of course just makes it extra un-high def looking. So this one, the theme doesn't seem to be years. The theme seems to be aliens. So it's basically all the quote episodes, all the parts of the anthology are all based around UFOs, some kind of a horror UFO interaction. So that's interesting, I guess. And then on top of that, you've got, what would I say? Let's see. On top of that, there is kind of a downside, and that is, I don't think the VHS per se idea quite works, because sometimes I feel like most of them are probably pretty modern. It's not even very clear if some of them are supposed to be on VHS. I think some of them are supposed to be like GoPros, which is fine. I mean, it just the VHS name doesn't quite work as much anymore, but I guess I just kind of went with it. So why is this the lowest today? I think probably I think that even though this is more fast paced than some of the other kind of ones in the series, and definitely gory, it has gore throughout. So I think if you're just looking for fast paced, quick, easy horror, popcorny, lots of gore, you'll probably like this okay. I mean, you might love it. But for me, it's just, what I liked about some of the things in the series is they really gave you, sometimes there'd be an element of really surprising, cool attempts at sort of short films, basically. And this one, I feel like almost everything is kind of middle of the road. So it doesn't, I don't hate it, but I just didn't love it. I'll just quickly tell you the kind of my takes on the ones in this movie very quickly. The first, there's a wraparound story, which is about this house, and there may have been things going on there in the past, and there's these 2 tapes that were left behind. Maybe aliens came in there, and it's kind of done as a faux, sort of a documentary, kind of like a paranormal activity kind of documentary kind of a thing. That one's kind of no here nor there. It's not much happens in it, but it's just a wraparound tie-up story they have usually in these. The next one is basically you got this kind of a paramilitary police force going to invade this house because there's been this series of kidnappings of like infants, and once they get in the house, it essentially becomes like a a first-person video game zombie shooter kind of a thing. It's probably the goriest and most over the top, so if you like that kind of thing, this might be your favorite one. Although to me, it's just kind of repetitive, lots of shotgun blasts, lots of zombie-ish type of things. The only time it gets really interesting is towards the end of it. We do see a creature that's the alien creature, and that's kind of cool. I wish they would have played on that way quicker and made it kind of the whole point of the story. So it's fine. Sorry, crunch, there's my papers. The next story is like these paparazzi in India, and they're trying to kind of get the scoop on this pop star actress, a diva kind of character, and they're kind of getting the behind the scenes shoot on her movie filming, and they get in there, and then she becomes something that you weren't expecting. And that one was pretty lame, I thought. The effects to me weren't great. The story was pretty lame. Probably one of the weakest of the bunch. The next one was probably the best. It was skydivers. And it was these skydivers in a plane. And as they're getting ready to all jump out of the plane, a UFO shows up. And so you get it following the UFO kind of interacting with the plane. And then as they're falling, stuff is happening. And once they get to the ground, stuff happens. And I say that one is the most kind of innovative and fun and energetic. And if it had all been at that level, I'd probably be 4 stars for this whole thing. As it is, not most of them aren't that level. And the next one was crunch again. Oh, the next one was probably the second best. And it was like kind of a real high camp thing, Doggy Dream House, which I've already forgotten. It doesn't tell you a good thing, but kind of like there's these PETA-like characters, and they want to infiltrate this woman's, she has this like doggy daycare video thing that she does, but in the background they can see that she's preserved like her pets, like basically stuffed her pets, and they think this lady, having captive pets and having these pets stuffed, obviously she's terrible. So as PETA kind of activists, they're gonna infiltrate, pretend to be dog owners that want to leave their dog with her, and then they're gonna reveal what she's up to. Although she's played as a super, super overly friendly, saccharine kind of character, so almost like like the main character in Misery or something. And then when they get in there, things go really sideways, and it's absurd but kind of fun what they do with it. Some people this might be their favorite. There is some stuff in it that's pretty fun. I would say that one's, almost up to the skydiver one. And then the last one is a woman who's kind of on her own in the desert, kind of in a area 51. 51? Do I even got the number right? Oh my God. Anyway, she's out there trying to investigate UFO sightings, and she sees one, and she finds a UFO, and she goes into it, which, oh my gosh, go into a UFO that's sitting on the ground doesn't seem like a great idea. It's not. That one's a little bit trippy, but it doesn't really go anywhere. So overall, I just can't really recommend this one. And if you have nothing to do and it's on your streaming service, which I think it's coming to Shudder, sure, give it a try. But it's to me, it's a weak member of the lineup. I'd probably say 2.5 stars overall, with some variation in the individual stories, like I mentioned. All right, next up we have Daaaaaalí. You know what? I said that VHS Beyond was the weakest, but Daaaaaalí might be the weakest, and I'm sad to say that. All right. I really like Quentin Dupieux. I like what he does. He always brings a weird, unique, surrealist, comedic bent to his movies. You never know what he's going to bring you. His movies are consistently short, like 75 minutes, 78 minutes. I don't think I've seen a movie of his that's up to 90 minutes. So as people that we go through lots of screeners, we do appreciate that. And I love the fact that he's always bringing something unique, and he seems to be putting out a ton. Like almost every year, consistently, he's putting out a movie. And I have consistently either liked or kind of loved a lot of his movies. But I don't know if Daaaaaalí is the one for me. I'm curious to hear what Eric and or Greg think of this movie. I guess if you get on the wavelength, you could really enjoy this movie. But I was actually a lot disappointed with this movie. And I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just Dali himself, Salvador Dali. Maybe any biopic of him is not going to be great. I know we saw one. And who was playing Dali? I can't even remember now. Oh my gosh. I think it was Ben Kingsley was playing Dali, and we saw that like a year or so ago. And it was just kind of a whatever, biopic of Dali in his later years. This one, the concept, or I guess the construct of this one is that there's a woman, and she is setting up to get an interview of Daaaaálí. And of course, if you don't know anything about Daaaaálí, famous surrealist painter, but also famous oddball, I guess, celebrity in his own right. One of those people who's famous for something, but also kind of famous for being famous. And I guess, especially in his later years, 60s and 70s, he kind of became this celebrity that was known for being very odd and flamboyantly, artistic and hanging out with, rock stars and just somebody who was really high on his own supply. And this movie definitely plays with that idea, and it also plays with the surrealism in the form of what it's giving you, which of course I appreciate that as well. So for example, the woman's waiting in a hotel room. She's going to interview him. It's just for I think it's for a magazine or a newspaper, I can't remember, but she's, for a print publication. And, there's this long hallway in the hotel, and they go out her and the assistant go out to meet him. And he's walking down the hallway, and they keep cutting away from them. And he's walking down the hallway, and it's one of those things where the hallway walk that he's taking is absurdly longer than the actual distance of what it would have been. So in other words, if he had to walk 50 yards to get down the hallway to their room, he walks the equivalent of like 400 yards to actually get there somehow. And he, calls off the interview immediately when he finds out there won't be cameras there. If there's no cameras, there's no point for him, even being there for his interview. And then that's kind of a shtick that's through the whole movie, is that every time they come to meet, the interview fails because she did something wrong, or he needed a bigger camera, or the camera that he got there finally, because of his absurdity, he runs it over with his car and destroys it. So now he can't be filmed with the camera because he destroyed it, but it's her fault, that kind of thing. It also utilizes, 4 or 5 different actors to play Daaaaálí, and they don't mention it, just happens. So throughout the movie, there'll be a different person just randomly during even the same scene playing Daaaaálí. There's a kind of a time loop aspect where Daaaaálí's at a dinner party, and there's a priest there and another guy, and the priest is telling a story, and then we cut to a version of that story happening, and then we snap back to reality, and Daaaaálí leaves in some form of upsettedness, and then that will be seen to be done, and then we'll go back to the party, and it'll happen again, or we'll be halfway through the story, but it'll be a different story. As you can see, there's a lot of playing around with time and reality, because Daaaaálí plays around with time and reality. There's even some recreation of some of his artwork and in a real world setting, as if the surrealistic stuff he was painting was actually happening in the real world. There's a little bit of that. I would have almost liked more of that. That was kind of interesting, just having it. The idea that the absurd stuff he's painting isn't just made up from his mind, but that it actually is stuff he's seeing. That's kind of a cool idea, but that one is slightly played with. Yeah, overall, it just kind of didn't go anywhere, and it kind of wasn't satisfying to me, and it just really didn't grab me. It seemed like everybody was doing their best, and everybody was committed to this, but I just didn't work for me. Sorry. But hey, it's short. Give it a try if it comes across the service that you want, and you want to give it a go. I gotta say 2 stars. I'm sorry. I just didn't have a good time watching this, and if a 70-something minute movie isn't enough to start not boring me, I mean, then that's not a good sign. Not for me, at least. I don't know. Okay. What else do we have here? Oh, yes. Frankie Freako. So of the features, Frankie Freako is my favorite. That's a lot of F's going on there. So Frankie Freako. Now, this is a movie that's almost impossible to rate. If you know Kostansky, that's Steven Kostansky, he's the director. I think he's also, I didn't notice if he's the writer and stuff, but he's the creative mind behind Psycho Gorman, which I loved. I think Psycho Gorman was like my favorite movie that year. But it's a very acquired taste, and a lot of people didn't like it. Highly, faux retro kind of movies. He loves to do a lot of practical effects, a lot of like puppet and prosthetics and just weird creatures. That's kind of his thing. He also did a movie called The Editor, which I really like, which is kind of a take on Giallo. Really highly stylized and weirdo version of Giallo movies. That one's even less probably accessible than Psycho Gorman. Frankie Freako, is it more accessible? I'll tell you what it is, but I don't know if it's more accessible, and I think it might be even more niche in its own way than Psycho Gorman. Okay, Frankie Freako. Here's my thumbnail description for someone who doesn't understand. So do you remember the Garbage Pail Kids movie that came out, I want to say in the late 80s, and had these like really grotesque puppet garbage pail characters that were the main characters? And this is also post like Gremlins and all these kind of ghouly, all these kind of movies with like little creatures attacking and stuff, right? And and the Garbage Pail Kids, I think, kind of tied into that as well. A terrible movie and really off-putting puppet characters. Well, the character designs of the Frankie Freako friends, once again, a lot of Fs, I think are highly inspired by that 80s Garbage Pail Kids movie. So this movie is kind of like if you took the story in some ways of Risky Business, you know, and instead of the Tom Cruise character, which is uptight teenager, you've got this character in here of this kind of a corporate drone, 80s corporate drone, ineffectual middle management dude who's very non-passionate and just kind of a cog in the wheel, doesn't even have passion for his wife. He's just kind of, going through the motions. And he has a weekend to himself. His wife has to go away for business. And what kind of trouble would he get into? Well, he's not the kind of guy who would ever get into trouble. But he is drawn to this ad for this party line. They used to have these phone call lines, you'd call it. Spent a ton of money to keep the minutes going, and you'd have a party line. You'd meet crazy people. There's this one that keeps coming on the TV. It's called For Frankie Freako, and it's this puppet character, like, cool dude puppet. Hey, let's party. I'm Frankie Freako. And you call the number, and he calls the number, and well, guess what? Frankie Freako shows up along with his friends, which I think I wrote down their names. Oh, spice up your presentation. Yes, blanket business. Okay, whatever. Where does it? Oh, Dottie and Boink. And Boink, so there's like 3 puppets that show up. And Boink has a catchphrase. He always says, Shabadoo. And then Dottie is like Annie Oakley kind of version of one of these creatures. And they show up and start causing havoc, a kind of Gremlins-esque. But if Gremlins is like the, I don't know, the high grade meal, then this is definitely like the the low grade Happy Meal as far as the look and the puppetry. The puppetry is so obviously puppetry. They don't try to make it like high grade. It's just like you got a puppet on your hand and it's a rubber puppet and they're doing the best they can with it. So it's absurd. It's very silly. It's really dumb. Or a lot of people say dumb and just hate it. Most people are going to hate this movie. This is not for most people. It is not as good as Psycho Gorman for me, partly because I like the creatures more in Psycho Gorman. I like the characters a lot more in Psycho Gorman. I love the family in Psycho Gorman. So for me, Psycho Gorman just hits me on all levels. This is like a ton of fun still, and still just weird. I want to say it's almost like the kids' version of that kind of world, which doesn't really make sense because this is also gross and weird and not for kids, because kids are going to be like, why does it look so weird and have puppets? They're not going to like that probably. So I don't think that works either. But this is full of creativity. It's full of activity. I love the fact that they're just going for it so hardcore, analog weirdness and puppetry and just stupidity. And I feel like this is both these movies, all the stuff this guy makes, I feel like he gets an idea and he does not censor himself. He does not say like, well, that's too dumb, I shouldn't do that. He's more like, that sounds really dumb, let's do that. And I love that ethos. So what would I rate this movie? I mean, I'm 5-star on Psycho Gorman. I'm not 5-star in this, but I could see some people being 5 stars in this if that's what they like. I can see most people being 1 star in this and saying like, why did you put me through this? So be very warned. Most people are not going to like this. Personally, I would probably go 4 stars on this, but truthfully, this is absolutely, I think, a 3-star banger in Eric's way of rating things. A 3-star banger, because this is the movie that does what it does really, really well, but what it does is only for a very specific audience. And if you're not the audience, you are going to be all the way out. And if you're the audience, you're going to pretty much be all the way in. All I can say is that I was never bored. I was always entertained by some weird turn that it was taking. And I laughed a lot. And more than a lot of comedies. I mean, especially the first half of this movie when the Freako gang is invading his house and he's dealing with them. It was just so funny. I don't know. To me, it was funny. All right, so that's Frankie Freako. That's the top one of the week for me that I saw. I know they saw some other movies than I did. Okay, really quick, some recommendations. I'm not going to get too bogged down in these ones. But the first one I just want to mention really quickly was, I'm sorry, I got to move my things here. The first one I saw was Apartment 7A. This is a Rosemary's Baby prequel. It is currently on Paramount Plus. The reason I watched it was two things. I mean, my expectations would be like, why are we making a prequel or a sequel to Rosemary's Baby? It's almost always a mistake to make a prequel or a sequel to what a mostly considered classic movie with fantastic people involved. Polanski, not so fantastic, but all the rest of the people involved in that movie are great. Ruth Gordon, especially my beloved Ruth Gorman. My beloved Ruth Gordon. Apartment 7A, though, is directed by Natalie Erica James. We loved Natalie Erica James's movie Relic, and I love to see the fact that she's getting work and getting a budget and getting some actors to continue making movies. And I have great hopes for Natalie Erica James, even though this doesn't maybe quite hit the mark. It also stars Julia Garner, and if you know Julia Garner probably by face, if you don't know her by name, she's fantastic. She did The Assistant a few years ago, which is great. She's been in Ozark. She was in that movie last year, which I cannot think of the name of right now, but it was about that weird bar/hotel out in the middle of the outback. She was really great in that. Even if you didn't like the movie, she's always really solid actor. The basic concept here, I'm not going to go too much into it, but if you've seen Rosemary's Baby, there's a period earlier on where she meets a woman who's in the same apartment building. The woman ends up, quote, committing suicide and jumping off the building. You're seeing the story of that woman in this one. So the one drawback already you have is, as a prequel, not only do you know the outcome, but you know the basic idea of what's going on. So there's no surprise there. So you have to have something else to kind of draw you in. So what do I like about this movie? What I like about this movie is it has some really interesting, actually, I'd be surprised to say this when going in, is song and dance numbers. It has this musical kind of core to it because at the beginning you're seeing the character, Julia Garner's character is Terry, the main character of Terry, and she's doing, she's like a singing, dancing person, which I didn't know Julia Garner could do, but apparently she can. Singing and dancing, trying to get into productions on Broadway. And she has an injury, causes her to not be doing very well. And through a series of events, she gets essentially kind of adopted into this apartment complex, which we now know is the apartment complex of the devil. And the same characters who were played by Ruth Gordon, and I forget who played the husband of Ruth Gordon in that movie, but basically the characters are Roman and Minnie. Roman and Minnie are in the apartment complex as they were in Rosemary's Baby. This time, Minnie is played by Diane Wiest, a really good casting. She's great. Now, obviously she'd know Ruth Gordon, but Diane Wiest is pretty awesome, and she's good in this role. So all the ingredients are there. And the big problem is, I think every time they did something really fantastic, the rest of the, 80% of the time, they were just rehashing stuff we had already seen in Rosemary's Baby and not doing it as interestingly. I think the real drawback here is the script. This is a, why did we make the script kind of a script? We've had the movie, we've had it done better. We're just trying to kind of basically reboot quill the movie, so there's no reason to do it. I feel like the director was most inspired when she was doing the musical numbers. And weirdly, I almost would have loved if they would have just said, like, let's remake Rosemary's Baby as a musical and done it. It would have been a big swing and probably a miss, but it would have been a really interesting swing and a miss or hit, because there's like 3 sequences, I think, in here where they do some sort of a musical thing. And when they do that, this movie just kind of comes alive, and you can tell that Natalie Erica James was probably most excited and interested and energized when she was doing those musical scenes, because they were something different. And especially notable is there is a musical sequence in the impregnation dream sequence, which there's a version of that in the original that's not a musical sequence, but there's a very notable dream sequence when basically the demon people are getting Rosemary impregnated by the devil. Well, there's a version of that here, and it's done like this stylized musical scene, almost like Red Shoes style, if you know the Red Shoes. And I thought, wow, that was a really cool idea. They should have really, really leaned into that. Anyway, unfortunately for this, I can only go 2.5 stars. It's not really good enough to recommend. It is free to stream, so you can dip your toe in and try if you want. But I just can't recommend it all the way. Okay, 2 things I can recommend. Really quickly, Uzumaki. Uzumaki, if you know the manga, and it is by Junji Ito, very famous. And Ito's work has famously never been adapted well at all. Uzumaki is probably the most famous, other than maybe Tomy. Uzumaki definitely has been actually made into a movie, I want to say in the 90s. That is weird and kind of interesting. It's a live action movie, but not 100% good, but definitely a weird oddity. This one is actually doing almost, frame by frame recreation of Uzumaki in animation with the black and white style, the line drawing style, really trying to recreate the artwork and bring it to life from the manga. And if you like that, or if you've never even heard of it, you should definitely check it out. They're releasing them as episodes in a series on Max. And the first episode just dropped this week. By the time you get this, it's probably the second episode just coming out too. Also of note is Colin Stetson is doing the score. So it's kind of a moody, weird score. Colin Stetson did the score for Hereditary and some other stuff. There's a pretty recognizable kind of sound to his work. And I think it works really well here with Uzumaki. And I think it's so far fantastic. And from all indications are they're going to really just follow the exact story, and they're not going to cut out a few things because it's a pretty big set of work, but what they are recreating, what they're doing is very, very faithful. And the very last one is my reaction to Sleep, which Eric recommended last week. I do also recommend this movie. I think I'm 4 stars overall. I might go higher to 4.5 on this though. It's actually really good. The more I think about it, the more I like it even more. Directed by Jason Yu, Korean director. This is the main actor is Lee Sun Kyun playing Hyun Si. He's the husband. Unfortunately, that actor has recently died of suicide, which makes this movie in some ways almost creepier. And then Jung Yoo Mi plays Soo Yin, who is a wife, and it's basically a husband and wife. I want to go through the whole story because I think Eric did a really good job reviewing it. It's just to say that basically the overall concept is the husband is dealing with sleepwalking and other various sleep abnormalities that causes him to basically, during the night, get up and actually do activities which seem to be increasingly dangerous to himself and to others. And they're like a young couple, ready to have a baby. She's pregnant, and she becomes more and more frantic and more worried about what to do with him because you can't tie him up and lock him up every night, although she's getting to that point. And how is she going to basically cope with a husband who is not himself at night? And what is causing this? And how can she deal with this? It's really interesting as far as that goes. Now, that would be its own story. And you would see, and they have a dog, of course, and the dog, I'm going to tell you now, the dog is in danger. Yes, the dog is in danger. In this movie, it didn't bother me for some reason because I think it was so, you just knew it. And the whole point of the movie is that everyone around is in danger. She's in danger. The baby's in danger. You just know that because you get the feeling that this sleepwalking activity is just going to escalate, and he can't control it, and she can't control it, and it's just more and more stressful for her and for him. And now to get into a little spoiler stuff, because like I said, he already reviewed it, and I agree with his review as far as the quality and what it is. What I think is most fascinating about this movie, once again, if you have not seen the movie, I'd say go see it before you listen to what I'm going to say. Most interesting about this movie is it could have just followed a path of like, how does she deal with him? Do they solve it? Or does she get hurt? Or does he get hurt? What happens? But all the way through the movie, they're both sympathetic, and they're both trying to deal with this, and they both have good intentions. He's not an evil person, and she's not an evil person. But the real big turn is, and it's done in 3 chapters, so each chapter is a time period jump forward somewhat, so you can see the progression. As it progresses, her character becomes in some ways the antagonist. Now, she's not an antagonist either, though, truly. But what she is she becomes, you might think, more unhinged. And that is, she starts to believe that maybe he's possessed by a ghost. You know, various people are telling her, her mom kind of brings in a shaman to try to tell her, and the shaman's telling her like, oh my gosh, he's got the ghost of someone else inside of him, and the ghost is what's acting out, and that's why he's, you know, doing all this stuff. And she starts to believe all that, and that causes her to almost be treating him as an enemy and not helping him. As opposed to them working together to try to solve this problem, she's now trying to basically fight the ghost, which is in him. And I guess I'm not going to spoil it too much. I'm going to say the way it plays out is surprising, and I really loved the way that they give both characters a very even hand, and that both of them are sympathetic and unsympathetic at various times in the story, and it isn't really, in both cases, quite their fault. So you end up rooting for them as a couple, which is really unusual in a horror movie, to have a couple that is kind of fighting together against a force that's afflicting them. And the finale, the way it plays out at the end, I really love the fact that you could actually view it either way. You could view it as there was a ghost in him that they had to fight together, leading to what happens at the end. Or you could see it as there was never anything wrong except him having a sleep affliction, and that he essentially just humors her psychosis, her paranoia, to keep the problem from escalating as far as it has been escalating by the end of the movie. And if you look at the second reading, he's basically just telling her what she wants to hear to get her to stop doing what she's doing. If you look at that as the final ending, then the final moments are kind of tragic and sad, because the final moments are right before the rest of the world discovers what she has done. And when the world discovers what she has done, their relationship will not be, quote, happy or content as she's kind of left at the end of the movie thinking it is. So I kind of think that second reading is the better reading, and probably the more true reading, because I feel like there's a moment where the husband towards the end is like, he realizes there's no coming back. She is fully gone, and the only thing he can do to stop what she's doing is to basically humor her and let her believe that he is indeed, you know, possessed by this ghost, and that she can indeed exorcise this ghost from him. By giving her that, he basically gets her to stop the path she's on, because the path she's on is very destructive at that point. Pretty cool movie. I think this is I wanted to say sleeper hit. I'm not going to do that. This is a movie I think that is going to gain some fans over time. It's not a super flashy movie, not a super gory movie. It's a really subtle movie. It's a more of a relationship drama than it is a true horror movie, but it's got some growingly extreme elements as it goes on. I think this is going to get a pretty good cult following, because it's a very solid movie. Okay, that's all I got for this week. I'll be back in the attic for a while longer, and we'll bring you some stuff next week. I'm trying to think, we have maybe some good stuff coming up next week, but I don't know exactly what's on the lineup, so we'll have to find out. Maybe by now you already know, because maybe they've already told you. All right, guys, I will talk to you soon.